Okie dokie folks, back again for another video. In this one we're going to be talking about the updates that have come out regarding the Spearhead game mode for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the new edition that is going to be landing very, very soon. Spearhead, for want of a better sort of comparison, is a little bit like Warhammer Age of Sigmar's take on Combat Patrol for Warhammer 40,000 and 10th edition. The idea is that you pick up one of these boxes, as you can see here, either one of the new Spearhead boxes, which you can see represented by the Cities of Sigmar one and the Flesh Eater Courts, or one of the original Vanguard boxes from the last edition. They are all effectively the same, they're just going to get renamed. And you can play games against your friends using a sort of stripped down version of the game in what they say around a lunchtime, so about an hour. The other thing that's good about this game, according to what they've said in the descriptions and stuff, is that it plays on a much smaller footprint effectively. So a quarter of the size of a full battlefield, plays on a 30-inch by 22.4-inch play space. I don't know why they can't just give us 3x3 or something. That just seems like an easier thing to do, I suppose. But there you go. Proprietary tabletops, so they can make specific things for you to go and pick up, I suppose. But anyway, the new Spearhead game mode, as I say then, will allow you to dive in and sort of play out your games using effectively a box full of models straight from the off. You will build them to a specific specification, so the way they look on the box front, effectively. And from that point on, you'll be able to dive into what are meant to be balanced games between different factions. What they've done, and this is the thing that is making me feel that this is actually going to be a little bit better than Combat Patrol, is that Combat Patrol was a great idea and I really enjoyed it, and I've made a Space Wolves Combat Patrol and a Chaos Demons one. I've played with both of those against my friends, had a really good time doing so, but it never felt like the factions were particularly balanced against each other. And I think that comes down a lot to the fact that 40k is a very different beast anyway. But it didn't feel like it was particularly balanced, regardless of what they said about the rules. I think they've tried to find a way around that in subsequent releases, so stuff through White Dwarf and new updated Combat Patrols for different factions. But I still don't think they managed to sort of hit that kind of Goldilocks zone effectively that they keep talking about all the time. The thing that makes me feel a little bit better about Spearhead as a game mode is what they said here. So this is one of the most play-tested games we've ever produced by virtue of how quick it is to play and how much fun we're having with it, explains Ben, the project developer for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Once you know how to play, you can get through a game during a lunch break. The whole Warhammer studio was so enthused by this. We had the chart up on the wall listing which factions had played against which other factions and how many times. People couldn't get enough. We've run 2 huge leagues so far, so they have a lot of data to work with. That makes me feel really good about what they're planning to do here and what they're trying to do. It really feels like they've taken on board stuff that may have been feedback from things like Combat Patrol. Obviously, it's a different design team. And use that to create something that is a much more balanced affair for those people on the tabletop. There are also a couple of ways that they've kind of looked to balance particular spearheads on the tabletop. So one of them is this new set of rules that you see here for reinforcements. So reinforcements, they apply to particular units that might be within your spearhead. In the case of Skaven, for example, we'll look at them in a little bit later. They have a war scroll. In fact, let's go and have a look at it now. They have a war scroll with this little symbol at the top. That means that they can be brought in as reinforcements. And so they can use this ability that you see here above. So once per turn in your movement phase, you can call for reinforcements. You can pick a friendly reinforcement unit that has been destroyed. So if those clan rats have been destroyed earlier in the game, bring them to the tabletop. Set up the identical replacement unit on the battlefield, wholly within friendly territory, wholly within 6 inches of the battlefield edge, and not in combat. Each reinforcement unit can only be replaced once. Replacement units cannot themselves be replaced. So you effectively get another chance to bring that unit back onto the tabletop and use it again. It makes sense for trying to balance those spearheads and vanguard sets that have a interesting mix of units in the tabletop. So, for example, the Slave to Darkness one here comes with lots of Chaos Warriors, Knights, a Chariot, a badass Warlord as well leading the way. The other side has the Gloomspike Gits, has trolls in the warband, has the squig hoppers, but then I would imagine that all of those night goblins, which are probably going to be chaff and cut down like wheat, will have the reinforcements rule, so you can bring them back into the game and keep playing. The other thing that feels really nice about this is that they've said that it only runs for 4 turns. So, and I think the normal game's probably going to run for about 5, I would guess. But that means that you'll be diving into quick turns, hopefully, and games will be fast, especially because of the size of the boards and everything like that. The other thing they've done is they've limited particular factions based on abilities. So the Indrasta's Spearhead box, which we've already seen and been out there in the wild and people can pick it up, you can go and get it right now, in fact, has the Lightning Strike Arrival battle trait. So Stormcast Eternals, pretty beefy arseholes for the most part. I've got to say, I'm a Stormcast player, so I'm one of them. But it comes with the Stormstrike Chariot, the Knight Velixor with the banner of Reforging, and you've also got the Vanquishers as well. It also comes with a group of Annihilators and also Indrasta. Now, Indrasta and the Annihilators are really nasty guys to try and fight on the tabletop, and so having them from the very beginning could really tip the balance when it came to fighting with these in your games. And so what they've done is they've made it so Indrasta and the Annihilators can't be set up during the deployment phase at the beginning of the game. Instead, they have to arrive in the 3rd battle round. As I mentioned, there's 4 battle rounds, and they can be set up anywhere on the battlefield more than 6 inches away from an enemy unit. So still within charge range, obviously, which is fantastic, but it means you really have to think about how you're going to hang on and score your objectives and your victory points before Indrasta and the Annihilators can land on the tabletop and do some serious damage and have some fun. It's thematic, it's interesting, certainly works for the Stormcast Eternals. It'll be fascinating to see what they do for other factions out there in the world as well. But a nice balancing mechanic, which I think is quite nice. The other thing they've talked about is the way that they've developed war scrolls in different ways. So in this one, this is a good example of it, and also there's some interesting bit in the text here as well. Your warriors almost always share the same characteristics and base weapon profiles as a full Warhammer Age of Sigmar equivalent. So there'll be no necessary difference really between the melee weapons, the rusty blades, and your core stats that you see here on the left as well. The only thing they have done is they've tweaked things for the spearhead boxes or the spearhead lists so that they're a little easier to play with out of the box. So in this case, they gain the reinforcements trait, the keyword that you see at the bottom, but they lose an ability that would have been attached to their rusty blades, which would have done a crit auto wound ability and also the command group benefit as well, which you saw there. They still get this ability, which I assume will be the case with clan rats anyway, which is an end of the turn where you can bring more Skaven clan rats back onto the tabletop. I think it's quite nice. They've also changed up stuff for magic as well. So in the new version of Age of Sigmar and the new edition of the game, when you cast spells, you will be able to choose from a series of, a list of them that fit your faction effectively. So you get an entire spell lore to pull from, and you can play around with that and do whatever you like with it. What they've done with Spearhead is they've taken a particular spell and they've locked that to a character. So in this case, the Magister on the Disc of Tzeentch, or Tzeentch, however you want to say it, Bolt of Change, which would normally be a spell that was particularly tied to their spell lore for Tzeentch, is now the sole spell that the Magister has to deal with. You don't have to deal with the other stuff in the magic modules and things like that. There's no power levels, casting values, or anything. You just use the ability as you see it there. So it's Bolt of Change. You're all a casting one of 2d6 on a 6+, inflict the damage and do the thing. This kind of gives you an idea of how the spell's going to work in the full game. So you're probably going to have to Bolt of Change is probably going to have a casting value of 6 anyway. But I like that it's been sort of added in here as just an inherent ability using the hero phase, and it's just easy and it's all on the one card, and it's a fantastic way of doing things. It all sounds good to me. I really like the way that they've been talking about this and the way that they've developed it, and I think it should hopefully be taking things in the right direction when it comes to Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I really hope that they have managed to nail this, and it is really fun to play. There's some other bits and pieces that they talked about, actually. In fact, we'll come back to this in a second, because there's a little bit about the actual launch box, which I think is really interesting. The launch box sounds very cool. It sounds very in line with what they did for Leviathan in a way. So the upcoming launch box provides everything you need to play with a friend. You get 2 complete Spearhead forces. In this case, we're assuming that means you're going to get Stormcast Eternals and the Skaven Clan Rats. Well, Skaven, which would include Clan Rats. You'll get terrain, great. A double-sided board with printed objectives for playing Spearhead, brilliant. A pack of cards that make the mode tick, which we'll look at in a second as well. You get the rule book, so the beautiful hardcover rule book, alongside everything you need to play, which is the core rules, the Spearhead Battle Pack, and the rules for every Spearhead force in the game. So everything that currently exists as both a Spearhead and as a Vanguard set, those rules will immediately be there. So if you have those armies in your collection, you have those models, just bring them to the tabletop and start playing the games. Like the Leviathan set seemed like a great investment, especially if you're diving into the game first off as Space Marines or Tyranids. This seems like it's going to be a really good one for people who are both obviously interested in Stormcast Eternals and Skaven, but also potentially if you've got friends who play the game, this could be a really nice way for you to dive in, get some new armies, and also play around with those new rules. Talking of the actual cards and stuff, they did mention a little bit more at the bottom here. So the basics of Spearhead, blah, blah, blah. 2 decks of cards are included in the box, the launch box. One that provides you with a twist for each round, which I think is quite interesting, rather than a twist for the scenario as a whole. Another that gives you an ability to score battle tactics or use powerful command abilities. So another way for you to learn about battle tactics and how they work and stuff like that, whilst also tying it into things like command abilities as well. They're a critical part of what makes Spearhead so compelling and rich with strategic depth, so we'll be taking a closer look at them later in the week. I'm really hoping that we learn a little bit more about this probably on Friday this week, I would guess, just to date the video. But it'll be fun to look back and see what they've done in terms of updating us on how Spearhead works and everything else in between. Really interesting take on that kind of beginner game mode for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I think this all is pointing in a really interesting direction. As someone who is playing 3rd edition and really enjoying it, even after 2 games of playing it and learning about it and watching videos and stuff like that, I'm really fascinated by what Spearhead is bringing to the tabletop, and hopefully it will encourage people to go out and pick up some of these armies, maybe give them a go, build them, play at the £100 mark or whatever, and start investing in the game and having fun with it, because the core rules are probably going to be free once again. Obviously the Spearhead rules will also be free online. I think they've said that. I think there's some clarification. There you go. These rules will be available free online shortly after the release of the launch set. Fantastic. So you'll be able to go and dive in and have some fun with that, just like with Combat Patrol. It's also an index edition, so all of that's going to be available for people to dive into and have some fun with anyway. But if you are somebody who just wants to sort of maybe dip their toe, maybe play around with some of the models you already have in your collection, use them as proxies and things like that, and play through Spearhead and see if the game is for you. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you like the idea of Spearhead? Does it sound like they've learnt some of their lessons as a entity, Games Workshop, since Combat Patrol? Do you think they've done some good work here to try and bring it into the fold as an interesting way for you to start playing the game? Are you tempted by it? Is there a faction that has kind of always been on the sidelines that you're now really interested to pick up and play some games with? I'd love to hear what you have to say, to be honest. Yeah, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And yes, I will join you for another video again very, very soon. I am super excited about Age of Sigmar and what it has to offer, if you haven't guessed by the videos after the last little while. Yeah, I'm going to dive off and get ready to make another video. I'll see you folks very, very soon. Bye for now.